All right, appreciate that. I think I am the host again. Well, good evening, everybody. I am Lawrence, and tonight I am talking about Spring Boot. And I fully recognize we probably have maybe half of the room probably has way more experience in Spring Boot than I do, but that's cool for everybody at whatever level of knowledge you have in your technical discipline to just come in here and to share. So tonight we're talking Spring Boot. And I'm going to get my screen to share real quick. We're going to jump into it. Host disabled sharing. Oh, you need to make me the host again. Hey, Andrew, are you still the host? I'm not able to share.
Hang on. How do I make someone the host?
Hover over my window. There should be 3 dots. You can make me a host.
Right. There we go.
There we go. Give me my power back, man. All right, cool. There we go. All right, which screen do we want? We want this guy. All righty. Do you see a PowerPoint? Yay, nay, good. All right, so
yes,
we've had some PowerPoints, we've had some no slides, we had some fancy slides. I've got 5 slides and a little bit of live coding, and I'm gonna get out your way because I know what time it is, and I definitely want to hear from James, who's after me. So let's get it. So first of all, what the heck is Spring Boot? If you've never come from a Java background, then that's probably your first question. The title of this talk is 5 minutes of Spring Boot. The first course that I bought in Spring Boot, or the first course that I saw in Spring, was like 30 hours. Clearly, we don't have 30 hours tonight. This is like 5 to 10 minutes. So it's going to be really high level, just kind of a topical look at Spring Boot. So if you look this up on the internet, what is Spring Boot? First thing you will come across is that Spring Boot is an open source, very important, Java-based framework used to create a microservice. If you haven't heard that terminology before, a microservice is a single function program, okay? It's developed by the Pivotal team. Pivotal is a company, and it is used to build standalone applications and production-ready Spring applications. Now, whenever you have a framework, someone or someone's has decided, hey, we've got this language, how can we do some things with it to make it very convenient for us and to have some certain advantages? How can we make the language better, so to speak? I don't need that slide. And so here are the benefits of Spring Boot, some of the benefits. Easy deployment, right? You want to spend more time on the code, less time configuring things for deployment. Simple scalability, being able to have more or less instances of your microservice. Compatibility with containers. Containers is like the buzzword of the decade. Everything's got to be Docker and Kubernetes, and everything's containers now. Spring Boot microservices work very well with containers. Minimal time on configuration and less production time, more time on the code that matters. Now, elsewhere on the web, I found another definition I thought was interesting. And it said, Spring Boot is an opinionated view of the Spring platform to get you started with minimum fuss. An opinionated view. Now, when you first come into coding, you read phrases like that, opinionated, like, what do they mean by opinionated? And it's really actually simple. All it means is someone or someone's has gone in and made some decisions for you. Some of the configuration, some of the variables, some of the things that can be configured, they've gone ahead and done that for you, typically what they view as to being a best practice, so you spend less time on that. You'll see that a lot. Just like with Python, you have Flask, you have Django. One is more opinionated. There's more things that are kind of already set in stone out the box. One has more flexibility. With Java programs, you have 2 different builds, or 2 major build systems, Gradle and Maven. Maven tends to be more opinionated, more already built out. Gradle tends to be more flexible, or the word they usually call it is extensible. So you have that in a lot of coding languages and frameworks. So Spring Boot is very opinionated, but it's done that way purposely to kind of speed you up towards production. And also, in this definition, it says Spring Boot is an opinionated view of Spring. So what is Spring, right? Back to putting the horse in front of the cart. So Spring is actually a whole family of projects. It's about nearly 30 projects going back to, as you see there, all the way back to 2003. There's Spring Data, Spring Web, Spring Actuators, Spring MVC. There's a lot of Springs. At one time, it was seen as a competitor to Java EE, Java Enterprise Edition. But in fact, there's a whole lot of Spring that actually works and functions very well. It plays nicely with Java EE, so it's not necessarily so much of a competitor. And for more information after my talk, if you want to kind of look into this more. If you're intrigued by it, go to spring.io for documentation, tutorials, and some quick start guides. And I'm going to follow my own advice. We're going to go there right now. So you should see the spring.io website. As you see, it says why Spring, and they give you the information about why you even choose Spring in the first place. Under the Learn tab, we have an overview, quick start, guides, things of that nature. And then here's some of those projects I was mentioning earlier: Spring Boot, Spring Framework, Spring Cloud, quick configurations to get your microservice up and running. Now, tonight we're going to use the Spring Initializer. So that same website, spring.io, if you go to start.spring.io, you get this interesting website here that will allow you, with just a very few clicks of a button, to rapidly, can't get the word out, rapidly ramp up a Spring Boot application. So we're going to do it right now. First option they give us on the top left is either Maven or Gradle, and I'm going to choose Gradle because that's what I use every day. Again, that's two different build systems for a Java project. We have some language options here. I'm going to leave mine on Java. We could do Kotlin or Groovy. If you haven't heard of Kotlin, Kotlin is very popular in the Android community right now. All the rest of this I'm going to leave as a defaults for the time being. The Spring Boot version, all the metadata, I'm going to leave that as a defaults. But here is where the magic happens: dependencies. And I'm just going to go ahead and click it. So with these dependencies, I can pull in any number of those additional projects that fall under the Spring umbrella, if you will. And so we're going to do a quick little web app tonight, good old-fashioned hello world. So I'm going to web app. I'm just going to literally type web, and there it is, Spring Web. I also want my dev tools for some quick reloading, things like that, fast restarts. I just added it. And just for kicks, I'm going to add Timeleaf. I'm not going to use Timeleaf tonight, but Timeleaf is a templating engine. You see it says it right there. If you can see that font, it's a server-side Java engine for rendering our HTML. I'm going to add that, but we're not going to actually use it tonight. Once you've added the dependencies you want, all you're going to do is click this right here where it says generate at the bottom. And it is going to generate the code in a zip file for you that contains all of that stuff you just asked for, plus some other things you may have forgotten. And as you see down there, the zip file says demo 3 because I've done this 3 times today. And by the way, this Spring Initializer, it is not only a standalone website, but if you were to go to STS, which is the Spring Tool Suite, that is where they've taken the Spring Initializer, this functionality, and embedded it or placed it right inside the Eclipse IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. So if you get STS, you can have Eclipse and the Initializer all bundled into one and do it all in one step. I'm doing it in 2 steps tonight, but I do want to show you that. The way you get here is spring.io/tools. So again, spring.io is where you want to go. All right, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need that. So that's the Spring Initializer. We already downloaded our file. For the sake of time, I went ahead and uploaded this to my IDE I'm going to use, which is IntelliJ. IntelliJ is right here, and I went ahead and opened this project up. Now, all the files you see here were created by that Spring Initializer. This is what we call rapid, well, not deployment, but at least a rapid startup. If you think of Spring Boot, we're booting up quickly. All these files were produced by that Spring Initializer. We're not going to look at all of them tonight, so I do want to show you a few key ones. Number one is the build Gradle file. So you remember when I clicked the button, I clicked the dependencies for Timeleaf, for web, and for dev tools. Look down the build Gradle file, there they are right there. Implementation, Timeleaf, web, dev tools. It put all that in there, all those configurations in there for me. And if you notice, somebody mentioned JUnit earlier, and went ahead and added the test suite for JUnit as well without me even asking, because everybody runs tests, right? We've got our version here, we have our language pick here, we have our Spring Boot version. All of that is built out in the build Gradle file. Again, I coded none of this, that's just from the Initializer. The other important thing that it did is over here in our source folder, it gave us this demo application class. And the important thing about this in Java language is it has the main method, which you always have to have a main method for any Java project, any Java program, any Java class. You've got to have that main method. There it is right there. So from here, we can do all kind of things. I'm going to keep it real simple, like I said, in the interest of time, and do a quick little hello world app. And let's do it right now. So this com.example.demo, that's what's called a package. So in a Spring project, you're going to group like files in packages. So if I have 15 controller files, I'll put them in a controller package, or 30 service files, I'll put them in a service package. for the purpose of this package will be just fine. So I'm gonna stay in this package. I'm just gonna right click on it. Again, this IDE is called IntelliJ. I'm going to right click on it. There we go. New class. And let's just make a controller. So a controller in this world is a means of mapping endpoints to data, the way I understand it. It gives us access to endpoints, whether it's receiving data, displaying data. You do that through controllers. So this will be a class. I don't know if my mouse is going out or I'm just not clicking. Oh, there we go. So there we go. It shows you the package name right there. We've got public class hello controller. And the way Spring works is through annotations, which is just markers that tell Spring what kind of file am I dealing with. So let's just tell Spring, yeah, I'm slowing down real bad. All right, here we go. So this is going to be a controller. Give me a second. I'm going to close Slack. I think it may be bogging me down. All righty. So that should be giving me an error. Things are moving really slowly right now. What do I need to kill? I can kill that. Ah. Okay, my code is, there you go. What we want to do is to import the class to take care of the controller, but that should be, I wanted you guys to see the error that it's throwing. There we go. That is really slow. So you see it turned red, and it's got some IntelliSense, and it's got some things in the IDE to notice when things are amiss. So that gave me the option to import the class, and there we go. It just imported that class from the Spring Boot framework, from the Spring framework for controllers. Now within here, we just want to do some simple mapping. So let's just map to whatever, hello. And you see it turn red a little faster that time. Thank God. The live coding gods are back on my side. We want to just import that real quick with our shortcut, import class, Alt-Enter. Awesome. And what we want this mapping to do, we want to map, once we hit our port and go to this endpoint, hello, let's run this method, public string, just greeting is fine. This is a method. For those of you coming from functional languages, you can call it a function. This is our method, and all I want to do is just return, and I can return an actual HTML file by just doing it like this, greeting. My computer is moving really slowly. Go FedEx. All right, let's save that. So we got our package here. We've imported two classes from the Spring framework here. We did an annotation, just a marker of what we're dealing with right there, saying this is going to be a controller. There's the name of our class. We're saying we're going to map to this endpoint. And the hello is just arbitrary. That had nothing to do with the fact that this is a hello world program. We can call it test. We can call it anything. You should name it something logically so you won't forget later, but you can name it anything that had nothing to do with the fact that this is a hello world program. We're running this method, this public method, and we're calling it greeting, and we're going to return greeting. So when Spring Boot scans this and sees this annotation, it's going to go looking for an HTML file in our templates folder called greeting. So we should make that so it won't be upset. So in resources, I'm going to templates, new file, and this will not be a Java class. This will be an HTML file, which is here. And we'll just call it greeting because that's what we call it already. And we don't want to confuse our program. All right, so this is just our boilerplate HTML. I'm just going to throw hello world in the title bar. And in the body, we'll just slap one of those good old H1s. Also, hello world. How about hello code connector? Why not? Mix it up. Good for a screenshot. And save that. And we should be done. We have our main method in this class right here, demo application. It's named properly. We have a controller that's going to do the mapping for us on that endpoint. and make sure we saved it. And we have our HTML in the right place. It's in the templates folder. We save that. We should be good to go. So in this IDE, which is IntelliJ, I should be able to just hit run, and it's going to take care of a whole lot of stuff for me in the background. So compiling and building and just lots of magic. It may take just a moment, so please stand by. I'm not sure how it looks on your guys' screen, but down at the bottom here, you can see it saying build, and you can see the little dots kind of going around in a circle. And that's my progress bar off to the right. In a moment here, the console is going to open up on this IDE, and it'll give us lots of important messages we're going to look at. Speak of the devil. So if this works, we're going to see some nice, successful, happy messages down here. If it fails, well, you'll see that too. So anybody that's dealt with Spring knows the first thing you see when you start a Spring application is the big Spring logo like that. So this is good so far. All right. Other important things we see right here, we see Tomcat. Tomcat is our server. It's been initialized on this port. I meant to show you guys that. So I do a lot of stuff on port 8080, and I didn't want to have any conflicts tonight. So in the application properties file, I went ahead and designated my port to be 8088, just so that wouldn't be a problem. Again, I do not know how the live coding gods are going to treat me tonight. So I initialized that, so that looks good. Starting the service Tomcat, that looks good. Live load reserver, remember live reload server. You remember we got that with the DevTools dependency, though, so that's good. And here's what we really, really want to see: started demo application. Once we see that line and no error lines, we are good to go. Which means I can go test that endpoint. So I'm gonna open the browser back up. HomeFedEx.com. All right. So let's go to the local host. Now, typically, let's say we forgot about our endpoint and I just went to 8088. I showed you guys the port was 8088. So let's go there real quick. And we see a big old error, but let's look at it closely. It's a white label error. So this is kind of a good error. Like something's running, but it's just not hitting the places where it needs to hit. And if we read through it, it says this application has no explicit mapping for /error, which means when we handled our mapping in our controller or any controller we have, we didn't tell it what to do when it runs into an error. Also, this is the root URI or URL, if you will. We didn't map anything to just, we didn't do this like that, right? Just the root. We did it specifically to test only in this example. So for this to work, I will have to add /test, because that's the mapping that I defined in my application. And when I go there, there is our hello code connector. So those of you that may be getting started with code, or you know a little HTML, CSS, you may be looking at this like, wow, that was a whole lot to do to get those 3 words to show up in your browser. I can do it way faster. Why would I ever use Spring for that? And the answer is, you're right, you would not. Spring is not just for static web pages, it's for complex, robust applications. We can literally parlay this into a suite of microservices, multiple instances with front, back ends, tie in some JMS messaging, you name it. You can build a startup, you can build a company. I'm telling you, these microservices keep planes in the air right now. So we did a quick example for the purpose of time, but you can do a whole lot with Spring Boot. Thank you. Woo! Stop sharing.